Hey, what's going on everyone? In this more casual review, we'll be taking a look at the premium Bandai exclusive RX-78-3 Gundam G-3. Yeah, the guy that's into anime accuracy is looking at a suit that wasn't even in an anime, and in real grade form to boot. So let's see how this goes. As always, we'll be looking at this kit in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks. Unlike those master grade reviews though, we won't be giving any scores out. Instead, let's just take a quick casual look over this kit. Oh, and huge shouts out to the guys over at samuraibuyer.com for hooking me up with this kit. They help you set up a Japanese mailbox so you can order directly from the premium Bandai website. They also just recently dropped all their service charges, so yeah, definitely check them out if you're looking to get some of these exclusive kits. Alright, now let's get into this real grades build. Now, it goes without saying, but this kit is essentially just a color swap of the already great real grade RX-78-2. If you're unfamiliar with real grades, they're basically 1/144th kits with partially pre-made inner frames. Yeah, the bulk of this inner frame is already made for you right on the runner. You just cut them out, then twist and turn certain pieces into place, then you put this armor over top of it. As much as I enjoy building inner frames, with these kits being so small, it's probably for the best as it cuts down on smaller pieces. The frame itself is super bare bones, with pretty much nothing to paint up here. But that's totally offset by this fantastic engineering. There are tons of sliding hatches and plates on this kit that move whenever you pose this guy. I mean, just look at this leg. This is more intricate than most master grades. And remember, this is a 1/144th kit, so getting all this in such a small package is pretty amazing on Bandai's part. It does, however, make this kit not super beginner friendly, because there's tons of room for error on this guy, even with the inner frame being pre-built. Moving on to the armor, there's no real bad nubs here, thanks to the abundance of white and off-white pieces, and amazingly everything comes in the correct color. Even this V on the waist, which is usually a sticker on 1/144th kits, is a separate piece. Same goes for the head Vulcans. This is really master grade level part separation in the palm of your hand. My only real complaint with this kit is that some of the panel lines can be pretty shallow, specifically these lines on the legs. The channels just aren't quite deep enough to hold ink, so you might have to carve them out a little bit or opt for using paint instead. As far as the specifics for this RX-78-3, there's really nothing outside of the runner colors being swapped out. You do get 2 additional runners though, one of those solid metallic coating locks for the limbs, and a new yellow runner for the cross on the shield, V-fin on the waist, and the scope on the gun. But really, there's so little changed in terms of this build that Bandai doesn't even print a new manual, instead just giving an extra little insert to explain the changes. Really, this premium Bandai kit is all about this appearance. First off, the elephant in the room here, yeah, I'm all about anime accuracy, and I prefer when kits look how they look when I originally saw them on screen, you know? But when it comes to real grades, that's all out the window. These kits are supposed to be over-designed, realistic takes on these anime robots, so just give me all the panel lines, decals, and streamlined proportions you can. Okay, now starting with these proportions, they're really slimmed up here, with tons of sharp edges and swooping curves. These legs specifically are super streamlined, but they still have some slight curves to them that make them look really modernized. The arms are a bit blockier, but still fit in with the rest of this design very well. On to the colors, my favorite aspect of these earlier real grades is the use of different shades of white. There's a pure white, a gray, and a more tannish color, each getting their own molded pieces. It's a really nice subtle effect that really spices up this design without overloading your eyes. The colors on this Gundam G3 are really the selling point here. You'll notice it essentially just removes the standard red, blue, and yellow in favor of a more monotone gray. That could lead this kit to looking boring, but instead we get this really nice pale purple and a bluish gray. There's also the singular yellow piece on the waist section for variety. So really, despite this kit supposedly being less colorful, there's actually a lot going on here, and these colors really pop in comparison to the various shades of white. I actually think I like the colors of this G3 more than the original. The panel lines are really solid here. Again, real grades are specifically made to be overloaded with panel lines, but honestly this kit really isn't. There's quite a few on the legs, but generally it's just a few tick marks here and there. Really, the bulk of these panel lines come from legitimate seams between the 3 different shades of white pieces. It's a really cool effect. You get tons of peel and stick decals with this kit, and being a real grade, I was essentially obligated to use as many of them as I could. They really help this kit look more realistic, you know? All these stickers work pretty well too, with my only issues being with these foil stickers used on the limbs. See, they have to fold around a few edges, and being on a joint, they'll pop up in seconds. I've seen people paint these, and honestly, that's exactly what I'm going to do after this review. This Gundam G3 comes with the exact same standard decal sheet as the original RX-78 real grade, but you do get some nice water slide decals specifically made for this kit. I really like that you get two options for the shoulders, one in line with the regular RX-78 release, and this black version with these 3 dashes. Also, yeah, these G3 specific decals are water slides, so try and top coat them if you can, or you'll wind up with some of them scratching off like I have here. I usually wait until after I review a kit to apply a top coat, as to not alter the appearance too much for the video, but here I really wish I had top coated beforehand. Having said that, I actually kinda like this worn out look. It has kind of a weathered feel to it, you know? Plus when you put this guy into a cool pose, there's so much going on with this design that you kind of don't notice small mistakes like that. Speaking of cool poses, let's move on to this articulation. Starting with the feet, there are 2 joints in here that actually allow for some solid footing. The ankles have 2 really good ball joints, which further help this kit get some great ground poses. I really like how when you tilt this foot, this ankle armor intentionally pries open a little bit. It's really cool. The knee bend has a really clicky feeling to it, but it gives you a very solid 180-degree bend. These moving armor pieces on the thigh and knee are really amazing, especially for a 1/144th kit. Try not to force any of these bends, by the way. This inner frame here kinda needs to be broken in a little bit. So the first couple poses you do with this guy need to be taken very slowly. After a few poses, however, he'll loosen up enough for some really dynamic stuff. Moving on to the hips, they're essentially just a variation on the standard polycap on a peg setup. This means you get really great kicks and splits, with a decent spin below. The weirdest joint on this kit is this moving mechanism in the waist that sort of allows you to move the whole hip section forwards and backwards. It's a cool gimmick, but honestly I really haven't found it useful for much. Maybe it'd help with like a crouching pose or something. The skirts really don't get in the way as much as you'd expect. I mean, you definitely notice that they're there, but they have enough movement to them to get out of the way of the legs. Onto the chest, you'll notice it does have a core block inside, so you're fairly limited here, mainly getting sideways tilts from a joint in the hips, some okay spins, and a very slight tilt forwards. The shoulders feature the standard lateral movement and a 360-degree spin thanks to its variation of a polycap on a peg. There's an amazing extra joint in here though. I bet Bandai had that final shooting pose in mind with this joint. Working our way down the arm, you get the standard 360-degree spin on top, and almost a 180-degree bend from the elbow. Again, there's some moving pieces in this bicep that just look amazing. The hands use the usual ball joints, but there is an extra joint above that helps them swing forwards and backwards slightly. You get 2 sets of hands with this kit. The first is a dedicated set of closed fist, which are my go-to, since the second set of hands is really finicky. See, there's sort of that old school master grade trigger finger split setup, but because these hands are so small, instead of hinges for the fingers, it uses ball joints. This makes these fingers really difficult to get working, and they'll pop out all the time, especially this thumb. Lastly, the head is on a deep ball joint, and the neck is on a hinge. You get a really great tilt backwards from this neck. It's really cool looking. All in all, this is some really solid stuff for a kit with this level of engineering. All these moving pieces are just beautiful. This kit looks amazing in all kinds of poses, especially once you factor in these gimmicks. First up is his iconic beam rifle. It's a really straightforward build, but there are some nice details in here you could panel line up. This guy can also hold this gun pretty decently once you get it in his hand. But that's the thing, getting it in his hand to begin with is really rough, since instead of just having a standard peg in the hands, each weapon itself has a peg that folds out and hooks into a slot inside the palm. It's super finicky, especially when you factor in how annoying these fingers can be. However, once the weapon is in place, it'll stay in pretty well. Moving on to the beam saber, you actually get 4 handles here, 2 normal handles to store in the backpack, and 2 that have a built-in peg for some actual posing. These blades are something else though. They're super tall, being as tall as this kit and then some. As such, every pose you do with these beam sabers is going to look super exaggerated. It's just great. Next is the token shield. I really like the added panel lines here. They really spice up the design, but they don't go overboard. The added G3 decal looks really cool too. This kit can also hold this shield pretty well too, with it plugging into a slot on the arm. Because of this inner frame, there aren't any serious weight issues here either. You can store both beam sabers and the beam rifle inside this shield as well. Lastly, for his weapons, you get his Hyper Bazooka. I really like how part of it comes in white, as most 1/144th RX-78s just have it come in gray instead. He can hold this weapon about as well as the rifle too, and thanks to some solid articulation in the elbow and wrist, he can actually rest it on the top of his shoulder. You can store the bazooka on the back of the skirt using this opening here, but the connection here can be kinda weak. This is also where you attach the dedicated action base connector. While in theory this makes sense and gives the legs a larger range of motion compared to the usual connectors, in practice, it makes this kit very unbalanced in the air. I tried to get some aerial shots for this review, and honestly, it just wasn't working for me. As for the extras, you get a fully transformable core fighter. It looks really solid, even coming with landing gear so you can display it on its own. While you can't transform it for use in the chest, Bandai was courteous enough to provide a dedicated core block, so you don't have to. And that about does it for these gimmicks. It's all your standard stuff, functioning pretty well. Now it's about time we wrap this up here. All in all, I love this kit. This is probably one of my favorite real grades, and it really stands out on my shelf. The build is pretty technical, but it's overall really interesting. The appearance is amazing, with tons of great details and amazing part separation. The articulation lets you do pretty much any pose you can think of, and he comes with all the standard weapons. This is everything you could ask for from an ARC 78 kit. As far as this G3 variant goes, I just love it even more. Despite the colors being more monotone, they really pop. I find he gets more attention on my shelf than the usual ARC 78. Also, thanks to SamuraiBuyer.com, he really wasn't that much more expensive to get. If you can get this Gundam G3 cheap, then it's totally worth picking up. This kit may just be a simple color swap with some extra decals, but these minor changes go a long ways. Alright, feel free to ask any questions you have in the comments, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram for updates, work in progress builds, the whole deal. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you next time.